All right, let's come back together. It is 9:09, just about to turn 9:10. And today is all about the buyer consultation, what the process looks like in order to get a buyer to a place where they are ready to buy a home. And for those of you who've watched me go through the BBA before, I am going to do it again today. So I will need someone to raise their hand to be the buyer, but we've got a little bit of time for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So successful agents do two things every day to build their business. So one is that they grow their business, and two is that they run their business. Growing your business is lead generating for buyers and sellers. It's making seller listing presentations to those sellers to get listings. It's making buyer presentations to get buyer listings. And then it's previewing property every day on the MLS and in person so that you know the inventory. Once you've grown your business, then you need to run your business. So you need to market those listings when you get the seller listings. You need to show buyers homes if you get the buyer brokerage agreement. You need to negotiate contracts so that you can get your clients under contract on a property on terms that are a win-win for all parties. You're going to do transaction management from contract to close, ensuring that everything is done, that critical dates are being hit, and that you are moving in the right direction. You're going to work with your vendors. These are your title agents. These are your lenders. They are your home inspectors, your photographers, all of the people who help you close difficult transactions every day. You're going to set goals for yourself, for your business, and your future. You're going to be as risk averse as possible by working with our compliance officers, Eve Sawicki and Kat Boshin, our broker resource, Murray Coleman, and your broker of record, Rachel Sartain, to ensure that you are doing everything by FREC guidelines. And then we're going to attend trainings like Ignite, and more importantly, we're going to get coaching to ensure that we're being held accountable and that we're achieving the goals that we've set for ourselves. And then we need to manage our money so that we can be building our wealth. Today is all about making the buyer presentation to the buyers to get that exclusive buyer listing, or known as a buyer brokerage agreement. So we need to set the appointment. So if we look back at the lead generation model, we've taken the time to prospect and market. We've captured a person's information. We've identified them as either a lead or a contact, a lead being someone that we are communicating in a one-way, whether it's maybe I have their address from an open house, or maybe I have their address because they're in my farm. And then I'm going to connect with them, make them a contact, and so that I have a two-way relationship, I'm able to send them information and receive information from them. I'm going to cultivate that relationship and make sure that I'm coming of value until it's time to set the appointment. This is where they've raised their hand, they've shown an interest in either buying or selling, and so we need to set the appointment to find out further motivation. So setting the appointment is understanding that process. It is getting an opportunity to have a conversation with someone and saying that it seems like now the next logical step for us is to get together and find out what your wants and needs are. Another example of what that would be is if someone comes into your open house, being able to say something like, has anyone ever taken the time to sit down with you and really find out your wants and needs for the home buying process? No? Well, I'd love the opportunity to do that. Can I buy you a cup of coffee maybe this afternoon or tomorrow, and we can actually sit down and go through the process and find out exactly what it is that you're looking for out of the home that you'd like to buy. So you can create the presentation by being in command. So there are designs that are in there. If you actually go to the designs tab of command, there'll be opportunities for you to use a guide if that's what you want to do. You absolutely can do that to find different material that you can be sending to them so that they can kind of see what the process is like to buy a property. For the actual presentation, I'm going to show you how to do it using the buyer brokerage agreement. So even if you don't necessarily have a presentation, you'll still be able to use this document and give them a very informed presentation so that they know what this process looks like. So here's an example of the table of contents in the buyer's guide that you can already grab from command. It's already built. You would be able to go through and change some of the information and tweak it so that it would be perfect for you. But you can absolutely see here that it already has your dream home, your preferences, your neighborhood, buyer 101, at your service, my promise, and then glossary. So an idea of what this looks like is that your needs drive how and when we find your next home. From this day forward, everything I do will be motivated by your goals and how you imagine your life taking place in your new home. Once I get an understanding of where you see yourself, finding your dream home will move quickly and with minimal interruption in your life. This is an opportunity where, again, it's already set up with really great questions, right? So visualize your dream scenario for buying your home. What's the one thing that has to happen to make that dream scenario a reality? How can I make that happen for you? Why is that important to you? And if we could add just one more thing to make this process even better, what would it be? And why is that important to you? So there's really great questions that are built into this, right? Building your preference profile. So understanding, have you considered who my main contact will be? What timeline would you like to strive for? Have you looked into getting pre-approved for a home loan? Have you thought about the price range that you'd be comfortable with? And if I found a home today that checked all of your boxes, could you see yourself making a move sooner rather than later? Again, this is a really great opportunity. All of these are already set up for you in the Design tab in Command. So you do not have to come up with these questions at all. This is absolutely already built for you. And so you'll see on the right-hand side that it says, what is your favorite way to receive information, whether it's call, text, or update, or email? When is the best time to reach you? Mornings, noon, afternoon, evening? As updates arise, how often would you prefer to be notified? So there's really great information. Your home wish list. So who will be living in this home? Let's list adults, children, and pets that will inhabit the space. What are some non-negotiables for your home? So instead of asking the question of what's a want and what's a need, framing it a little differently, what is a non-negotiable for your home? If you had to name your top 5 non-negotiables, what would they be? Beyond your top 5, what is something that you really want? Right now we move into that this would be an added perk. Do you have a preference for the year the house was built? Do you want a house that is in move-in condition, or are you willing to do some work on it? And when people visit your home, what do you want it to say about you? Is a really great question, because so many people's identities are directly associated with the way that they decorate or they present their home. Are there any specific features that you would that would make your next home feel instantly, or your next house instantly feel like a home? And will you require accessibility options? Neighborhood insight. So if they've already said some of the neighborhoods that they're looking for that you're aware of, maybe they came through an open house, and let's say that they came through an open house in Old Northeast. Well, you'd already have Old Northeast kind of pulled up, and maybe you'd have one more neighborhood that you can just demonstrate the level of information that they can get from your app and from you, and that you can be building them a custom website to include any of the neighborhoods that they're interested in. Walking them through what the process looks like, right? So they partner with an agent, they get pre-approved, they're finding their home, they make an offer and negotiate terms. And so this is, if they were going to be using Keller Mortgage, there has to be an affiliated business arrangement disclosure. We have an affiliated business arrangement disclosure also with Tampa Bay Title. There are some individuals that are shareholders in both Keller Williams as well as Tampa Bay Title. And so you're just disclosing that that's something that is there, right? And then this is your unique value proposition, right? And so this is a wonderful thing that you can be using as a framework of what it is. If you're feeling like, well, I don't really have a lot in my wheelhouse, well, look at the paragraph. It absolutely has to do with you. When you choose to work with me, you're partnering with a trained agent that has the backing of the world's largest real estate company, consisting of 180,000 plus associates around the globe. That puts your search in the hands of the largest, most resourceful real estate network. And by choosing to partner with me and the Keller Williams family, you gain access to a suite of technology that keeps you informed and engaged with what's happening in the neighborhoods you're eyeing. Keller Williams was built on a simple yet revolutionary principle: people are what matter most. To help cement this understanding, we've formalized a belief system that guides how we treat each other and how we do business. And so you'll see below there, they're the Y4C2Ts. Letting them know and actually walking through this. When you work with me, you're working with someone who's built a belief system around their business that incorporates these key factors. So we believe in win-win or no deal. understanding that it's not what's in the best interest of me or what's in the best interest of you, but what's in the best interest of the entire situation to ensure that it's a win-win in all cases. Integrity. I intend to run a business that's based on integrity. So I do the right thing. I try to do the right thing as often as possible. And I just want you to know that that's something that's very important to me. And if ever there's a time where you're questioning my integrity, please let me know, because it is something that's very important to me in my business. Understand that customers always come first. And so I'm going to be as available for you as possible. I am going to make sure that I can be as accommodating for you. If I personally can't do it, someone else from my team is going to be able to help make sure that that happens. And yet understand that that includes a commitment, right? There are commitment in all things, including my family. So there might be some times that you try to get in touch with me, maybe in the evenings, and that's my family time. I just want you to understand that I am as committed to my family as I am to making sure that you're getting what you need. And so we'll definitely have a conversation of what that looks like, and honoring a system that can be a win-win for both you and my family. Communication is always to seek first to understand. So I'm really going to be asking you some questions that are going to help me understand the place that you're coming from. So if it feels like I'm asking a lot of questions throughout this process, I just want you to understand that it's from that perspective that I'm really trying to get to know you and why things are important to you. Creativity is ideas before results. And so there might be some out of the box ideas that are going to come up, especially in today's market. You might find that we're in multiple offer situations. We might be coming up with some creative solutions in order to really try to get your offer to rise above some of the others. And so I'm going to be working with you sometimes to be brainstorming on what that creativity looks like and different ways that we can really try to step up. Teamwork, together everyone achieves more, and I love to think that you and I are a team. We're going to be working together. We're going to be having conversations. Really from that perspective, I expect for myself to show up at a high level as a team member, and I would love to know that you also intend to show up as a team member to make sure that we all are going to be able to move through this as quickly and safely as possible. One that's going to be able to save you time and money, hopefully. Trust starts with honesty. And again, I really like to believe that I am an honest person and am a trustworthy person. And so I'm going to be honest with you. And sometimes being honest with you might mean that I'm going to tell you some things that you're not going to want to hear. And I just want you to remember that in that moment, if I'm saying anything about the situation that might not be the most rosy of things, that you're understanding that I'm just trying to do it from the perspective of being honest and open with you, because the last thing that I want is for you to be disappointed based on false expectations. And then lastly, success is results through people. I can't do this all by myself. I have a wonderful team of people who help me, my transaction coordinator, my title company, my lending partner. Those are the people who really ensure success for me and for you through this process. And so I really just wanted to take an opportunity to go through these and let you know why these words have become my belief system and have become a big part of my business. So break script for a moment. I want you to go into the chat box and tell me, what are your thoughts when you hear someone walk through the Y4C2Ts, this belief system, when you're talking to someone in a buyer consultation? I know we've done this before with some of you, and yet I need to hear from all of you. So what are your thoughts? What are some takeaways by seeing that? Yeah, it's definitely making sure that people understand that you're grounded in morals. Absolutely. What else? Kelly says that I think it creates trust between the agent and buyers. Yeah, I mean, imagine you're doing this right from the very beginning. So we don't have an opportunity when first meeting someone to really show them that we're trustworthy, that we are a person based on morals and integrity. And so actually not just letting this be, the back of an HR brochure, but that this is actually something that we believe in, and that I'm taking a portion of the time that I'm spending with you to go over these is really important, I think. Linda says it helps people feel more comfortable. It feels like a team approach that you are on their side. And then Kimberly says it's feeling confident in the realtor that you choose. Absolutely, and it's instant, right? So this was what I did with you, was a script. I expanded upon what was already right in front of me. I didn't have to know them or memorize them, although I have, but you can see that it's in your material. So you can reference back to it and show them exactly the words that you're talking about so that they can move through it. And notice that through this whole process, I've not said anything about the number of transactions I've done or how many years in the business. You do see that in the box on the right-hand side. And yet, if that's something where, you don't want it to say 0, 1, well, then just remove that box. It's completely fine, because when you can still speak to Keller Williams International, or even talking about our local market center and what volume our local market center has done, you can absolutely use that right box of how many years has the office been open, right? How many closings were done in 2019? Any of those things you can actually go through and make sure that the information is there. If you yourself do not have enough numbers for your business, right? So actually conducting the consultation, right? So this is talking about the welcome to the buyer presentation. You can go through the buyer presentation that I've shown you that you've gone through. Another thing is just to welcome someone in and start to have a conversation around them and around the buyer process using that buyer brokerage agreement, right? So we actually are going to do the buyer brokerage agreement now. So what I would like is, I need to stop share for a moment. If someone that's on here would like to be my buyer, please just raise your hand. We'll go through this process. Don't worry, you just have to answer some light questions, but I'm gonna go through the buyer brokerage agreement, or at least a large portion of it this morning, so that you can see what that process looks like if you were to use this document. So if you would like to be my buyer, then please just right next to your name, there's a more button, and you're just gonna click the more button and then raise your hand so that I know that that's what you'd like to do. Just remember, if no one volunteers, someone will be voluntold as tribute. Thank you, kitty cat.
Yay.
Hi there.
Hello.
Long time no see.
It's been ages.
All right, so from this perspective, using the buyer brokerage agreement, this is the actual document that we would be using and walking through. The reason why I really enjoy using the buyer brokerage agreement through this process is, more often than not, the way that a lot of people do it is that they have this different presentation. It has a whole bunch of really pretty slides. They've got a great conversation until about 40, 50 minutes in, and then they pull out this legal document that they've never talked about, expecting a buyer to sign it instantly. And if you have someone who is a high C personality, they're not going to understand. They're actually going to break down, because there's a whole bunch of language that you're asking them to sign off on that they have no idea what it is. And so I would actually have this document out and would be filling it out as we're talking. So Kat, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me. I'm really looking forward to getting to know your wants and needs through the buying process.
Cool. Me too. I'm really excited about buying a new home.
Awesome. So remind me, where is it again that you're looking to buy?
I'm thinking up in Seminole. I really want a larger lot, a bigger piece of property than in St. Pete proper, because I know St. Pete, they're pretty narrow, 50 by 100 and stuff for the average. Now I need a little more land than that. Sure,
and I completely understand. So when we do find the home that you're going to buy, what's going to be asked is usually going to be by title, and even by a lender if you're going to use a lender, on how you intend to record your name on the deed. Do you know how you intend to do that?
It will be joint tenants with right of survivorship.
Okay. And so with your actual name, right, how will your name appear on the deed?
It'll be Catherine M. Bastian.
Okay. And so while she's doing this, right, break script, I'm going to kind of bounce in and out. I'm
Yep.
going to physically be writing Kat's name. So could you spell Catherine for me?
Yeah, it's definitely with a C. It's the long way, Erine.
Got it. And then Boston as it sounds?
Bostian.
Okay, awesome. And so then for broker, I'm going to already have Keller Williams Realty St. Pete. And so tell me a little bit in terms of when you would like to be moved into the property.
Well, I've got to sell my house, so it's probably going to be within the next 3 to 4 months or so, I would say.
Okay. And so if you don't mind, what I would love to do is just kind of put down maybe even a stretch. I mean, what happens if we weren't to move in the next 4 months? Is it something that absolutely has to be done within 6 months? What would you say?
No, it's not the end of the world at all. And it would, a lot of it is going to be contingent on selling my current home.
Sure. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to say that as we're having this conversation, we have the mindset that it's going to be something that's going to happen within the next 6 months, hopefully even sooner. But we'll definitely be reevaluating through that process. Is that fair?
Fair enough.
Okay, awesome. So tell me, you had already kind of mentioned that you were looking for something with a little bit more land than what you're able to get in St. Pete. So I'm assuming then that you're looking for single family?
Yes, please. Definitely no condos. I don't think I could do a condo or a townhouse or anything like that.
Okay, and definitely understand about townhouse, and yet over in Seminole, there are also things that are like villas, right? So it looks like a single family that's been split into 2 units.
Right. Yeah, I'd have to say that's a hard pass on that one, just because I don't really want to have to deal with any HOAs, and I have pets, and I don't want to have to negotiate any of that nonsense.
Absolutely. So single family is what I'm going to put down here. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you had mentioned Seminole. Now, is it important to you that the mailing address says Seminole, or is it really more about the size of the lot?
It's probably more about the size of the lot. I mean, certainly location will come into play later on. I mean, it's not just, if it's a great place and it's in a really crappy area, then that's not where I want to be.
Sure.
But yeah, certainly I think there's some latitude there, certainly. And I know there are some places too, even in St. Pete, that have larger size lots. So I'm not averse to that. I'm just saying, the typical, standard areas and stuff that have the more, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but the more, standard size lots. I'm not really interested in that.
Okay. So would you say that Pinellas County is important to you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. So wanting to stay within Pinellas County.
Sure.
And now if there was great property and yet it was in Palm Harbor.
No.
Okay. So
yeah, I've got a threshold. I probably wouldn't want to cross. I wouldn't want to be any further north than, aside from Seminole, than Park.
Okay. And so with that, it kind of sounds like anything within like 15 minutes of St. Pete.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay. And so again, break script for location, I'm going to put down Pinellas County. And yet on my side notes, I'm going to have like a legal pad where I'm writing some of these things down. I'm taking down her specifics. I don't think that the buyer brokerage agreement needs all of that information, but this is a really great way that I'm able to drill down on the location that she's comfortable with. And then what were some of the things that she said absolutely not to. So the last thing that I want to do is ask her a question and then start sending her things in Tarpon when she was very specific about not going that far north.
The other thing, if I could say something to you, Michael, just on that, is what I learned about filling this out is to be as open-ended as possible on a lot of it. I understand the reason for looking for these, drilling down for this, but also too, you don't want to limit yourself and put Pinellas County, and then I find the perfect house and it's in Pasco, and now you're out of a BBA.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why we also do that, for me, the reason why I like to say Pinellas County as opposed to Tampa Bay,
right,
so that I can bring it back when she starts sending me things in Palmetto, or she starts sending me things in Bradenton, that we go, okay, well, I just want to circle back because it's absolutely happened to me. I know it's happened to you, Kat. I mean, there's
right.
no one that it hasn't happened where they start shifting away from the 3-2 in a particular area where they're sending you 2-2s an hour away.
Right.
And you're like, whoa, what happened? Okay, so Kat, have you thought about the price range that you would like to stay within when purchasing a property?
Probably 350 to 450.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I often find that depending on the situation, the actual purchase price might not be as important as staying within a monthly budget that's dedicated for a housing budget. Which one do you say is more important to you, the actual price tag of the property or where we end up on a monthly basis?
Probably going to be a little bit of both, actually. I mean, they both factor in. I mean, the price is going to dictate the budget for
Okay.
the monthly budget. I mean, it just depends. It needs to be the right house. That's more important to me than anything. And if it's within that range, then that's fine. I mean, obviously cheaper is better, but you know, understanding that, it may take a little more to get what I want.
Of course. And so what is that kind of monthly budget that you'd like to stay within?
Well, the 350 to 450 puts me in that. Let's leave it at that.
Okay, absolutely. Now, have you already had an opportunity to figure out how you're going to purchase the property, whether with cash or with financing?
Yeah, I'll definitely be financing it, but I will want to sell my own home before to get free up some extra liquid for the down payment and for any improvements or things that I want to do to the property.
All right. And so have you already spoken with a lender?
I have.
Wonderful. And are you committed to that lender or are you looking for other opinions?
No, I feel pretty good with this one. I've worked with them before and I feel pretty confident about the deal I'll get and everything too, and fees and all that stuff.
Wonderful. Well, when we're done here, I can send a reminder email. However, I would love for you to be able to put me in contact with that lender as they're going to be partners with us through this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just send me a reminder. I'll be happy to put that together.
Absolutely. Now, tell me a little bit about the wants and needs. You had mentioned property, right? Wanting a larger yard. Have you quantified what that looks like?
Yeah, lots of trees.
Okay.
And definitely needs to be a tree lot, and fences here nor there. Room for a pool if there's not one, and pool is not a mandatory thing. If there's one, great. If there's not, that's fine too. Just would like to be able to have room for that eventually.
Okay. And everyone's description of large or larger is different. And so is there a certain size of yard that is too small?
Yes, I would probably want nothing less than 125 deep,
mm-hmm.
and then more than 50 wide.
Okay.
Probably like 75 wide or 70 wide, something. Even, if there were a house with a double lot or something like that, that would work great too. And I know some of those pop up even in St. Pete. So something like that.
And it sounds like also based on your description is that it's important to you that majority of that land be on the back side of the home.
Preferred, yes.
No, not
for my own private enjoyment, yes.
Okay, absolutely.
I don't need to show off for the neighbors.
Sure. So in addition to the backyard, what's important to you about the house itself?
I prefer an updated kitchen. I don't really want like a galley kitchen, a long, narrow kitchen. I want something that's got some space to move around in it. Open floor plan if possible, open from kitchen into the living space. And keeping in mind that if there was something that had that potential, that, given the price point, I would probably be willing to take that on and have that done myself.
Okay.
I'm not specifically looking for a fixer-upper, but something that would be, has potential if it hasn't already been done.
And when you say updated kitchen, is that hard surfaces? Is there a certain color of cabinet?
Yeah, they'd be hard surfaces and, no Formica. And I've seen even retro kitchens that have been updated that, modern features and things like that I really like too. I just like, something with character. That's going to be the biggest thing. I want a home with character.
Okay. And would you identify yourself as a chef?
I like to cook a lot, yes.
Okay. And so is there any special requirements, whether it be gas or electric, any kind of stovetop or ovens that you're looking for?
It would be nice. I probably would trade mine out because I just got a new stove, so I probably would trade that out with whatever's there anyway. So that is a moot point.
Okay. And is that gas or not?
It's electric. It is electric. It's induction.
Okay, wonderful. In addition to the kitchen, how many bedrooms are important to you in the home?
I could do a minimum of a 2-2. with like, as long as there was some extra space, say potentially for an office space or a closed-in lanai or something like that.
Okay.
Opportunity for an extra bedroom would be great, but it's not a mandatory thing.
I got it. And so the two dedicated bedrooms, I guess that leads us to the next question, which is, will anyone else be living in the property with you?
Just my partner, and that's it.
Okay. And so outside of a minimum of 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, an updated kitchen, and the larger backyard, are there any other wants or needs that I should be aware of when going through the searching process for you?
A garage would be nice, or probably in something like that, at least a 1-car garage. I'd like to be able to have room or an already existing shed or workshop or something like that in the back as well, if that was a possibility. I mean, I'm giving you my dream list, so.
Yes, of course. Is there anything that is a non-negotiable for you, let's say about the structure of the home? Do you prefer block or wood, anything like that?
I'd prefer block, but I wouldn't walk away from wood if I had the opportunity to have it, properly inspected and checked out. I mean, termites are termites.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Am I missing anything from you at this time about the property that you're looking for?
No, I said lots of trees, right?
You did say lots of trees, definitely making
Yes.
sure that the back is covered.
Yeah, it's covered. Yeah, I definitely don't want something where it's wide open and the house is out in the middle of everything, very bare and hot and all that kind of stuff. So, okay. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Are there any trees that give you concern?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I don't want it to be overgrown and I don't want a backyard full of, what do they call them? I'm trying to think of the names. There's some that are invasive. I don't want a backyard all overgrown and stuff. I mean, if it had trees, I'd like them to be intentional trees, not accidental trees.
Like ficus?
Ficus is not bad, but I don't want it next to the house. But I mean, there's certain ones I'll look and stuff too. But the more important part about this is that I really want protection for my chickens, because I have chickens and I don't want hawks swooping
Okay.
in.
Absolutely. We can definitely look out for that.
Cool.
Well, I would love just to take an opportunity to kind of go through what the expectations are out of me in this process of helping you.
Okay.
So letting you know that what I intend to do is to use my knowledge and skills to help you through this process, to be asking you some questions and working closely with your lending partner to determine what's financially capable and what all the options are for you. I personally don't want to know anything specifically about your finances. I think that that's a personal relationship with you and your lender. However, with that, I do want to make sure that you're making a decision that's going to be helpful for you, and that we're going to be buying a home and you're going to be happy, and that you're not overextended or find yourself in a bad position afterwards.
Agreed.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Just as we've done a little bit today, is we're going to be discussing the requirements that are important for you. And then it's my job and my team's job to help locate and find those suitable properties. When we do find the one that you want to make an offer on, I'm going to be working with you through that process of negotiating the contract, using all the tools possible to ensure that you get the home that you're looking for. And then I actually use a great woman, Echo, who's my transaction coordinator. She partners with me to ensure that we meet all the deadlines and that we meet all of the requirements so that you can get to closing. So just keep that in mind when you do. Of course, I'll introduce you. But when we get under contract, you will be hearing from Echo, and she'll kind of be my partner through that process to make sure that we're doing well. Understanding that oftentimes through the home buying process, that the seller ends up actually paying my fee, so that it's something that costs you nothing or as close to nothing as possible. And with that being said, it still does not mean that I actually work for the seller. Right? My job through this process is to help you navigate through this transaction. And so I just want to be clear and upfront about that there's no loyalty, if you will, to the seller just because they're paying that compensation.
Okay, great. I appreciate you clarifying that.
Absolutely. Just do know that in addition to working with you, our team works with multiple buyers, and that there might be some times where I might have found a property for someone else who's looking to buy, and that might be a property that met your criteria. Just know that through that process, I can't share with you any terms if they were trying to make an offer the same time that you would, and vice versa. I'm also not going to share with them any of the material that's about your offer. They're to make their offer as a standalone, and so you don't necessarily need to worry about that.
Okay, good.
Fair housing, just a real quick, fair housing was something that was passed federally, and then we also have different versions here locally. So that's just to let you know that I'm not going to be able to answer any questions or participate in any conversation that would ask me to identify someone based off of their race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, or here locally, I also cannot speak about sexual orientation or gender identity. And so if you have any questions about a particular neighborhood or a particular owner, or if any of those questions come up, I just want to let you know that there might be a friendly reminder that that's something that I cannot speak to. And also I cannot speak to others about any of those things that might have to do with you as well, so that they can't discriminate against you.
Okay, all right. And what about, oh, I just forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, and you can tell me all about crime and stuff like that too, right? Like if it's a good neighborhood or a safe neighborhood, right?
Well, all of that's relative. The best thing that I can do is I can send you to the sources that are going to be able to answer some of those questions for you, and then you'll be able to assess what that means, because everyone has a different interpretation of a safe neighborhood.
Okay. All right.
But there are resources for you. I can definitely send you there when we get to that place.
Okay.
That will help you make a decision. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then lastly, on this page is that there are some vendor partners that I work with very closely. And if ever we're in a place where you're asking me for recommendation, I of course will absolutely do so. And if you would prefer multiple recommendations, I can do that as well. However, just please understand that even if I'm giving you a recommendation, that I can't actually speak for their quality of work, right? They're not a part of my business. It's just that we vendor partners. I do work very closely with people, and I do hold them to a standard where they're supposed to be delivering the same level of customer service that I and my team will. And yet, as you can imagine, everyone's human, and sometimes there are mistakes that challenge that. So I just want to be very clear about that. Okay. Any questions on this first page?
No, I think we're good on that.
Okay. And now is just to talk a little bit about kind of my, not my expectations of you, but this is what's going to really help me do my job in the aspect of us being a team, how you can show up for me. So one of those is to understand that we're going to be working together and making sure that you're going to be helpful with me to make sure that we're getting you the information about the properties, that we're able to see those properties as quickly as possible, or what is working for your schedule. That you're going to provide me with actual financial information, again, not to me, but to your lender, that of course, when they're asking for accurate information, that's really going to be able to help us through this process. In addition to when we do find a property that you would like to go under contract with, there's an opportunity where we do make an earnest money deposit. And so there will be opportunities where I might have to ask you some questions about being able to put down a certain amount financially through the process of buying this home. And so again, it's just from that perspective that the last thing that we would want to do is to go through a process, get under contract, write a check, and then that check not have sufficient funds. And I know that that's probably not your intention, and yet this has happened before. And so it's just being very clear and upfront that for some people, realizing that through this process, we definitely want to make sure that when we're going to write an offer, that we do already have that money. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And so if we're waiting on maybe a bonus check or something else, please let me know that on the front end. So then that way we can set clear expectations of when we're going to deposit that money.
Got it.
So also is to be able to be available to meet with me. either in person, or we can also still do virtual showings on any property. And so with that, tell me a little bit about your time frame. When would be the best time to go and look at properties if we find them?
I'm kind of flexible. I'm self-employed, so I have the opportunity to go whenever I need to. I can make my schedule work around that.
Okay.
Probably, I would say probably in the afternoons, though.
Okay, so preferably afternoons. And then you had mentioned that your partner is going to be a part of this process and live with you.
Right.
And so I would assume that it's going to be important for them to show up. Is it important for them to be at all showings, or will there be some times where you might show beforehand and we'd go back?
Yeah, I think we do that. I think
Okay.
it'd be easier that way because he's got a regular job. So.
Got it. And so then we'll want to make sure, I just want to make a note that if we are setting up maybe like a second showing, that it'll probably be on the weekends or in the evenings.
Correct.
Okay, absolutely. And so this is just another line here is talking about holding my brokerage harmless against any losses, damages, costs, or expenses of any kind, including attorney's fees and from liability incurred because of myself acting on behalf of you. This is a lot of legal language, which is just to let you know that through this process, I'm always going to help you navigate through. And yet we are going to want to conduct and consult any appropriate professional. You know, my role through this process is that I'm a sales associate, right? So I'm here to help you through the sale. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a general contractor. I'm not an interior designer. I'm not a pool tech guy. So if any and all of those questions come up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably defer to a professional where I will either make that recommendation as someone who you can speak to, or I will go on a fact-finding mission and find you a couple different recommendations from my peers so that you can make an informed decision.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on that paragraph?
Nope, that sounds great.
Okay. Awesome. So some real estate agents charge a retainer. I do not charge a retainer. I'm not an attorney. I get paid when you find the property that you're looking for. So this is just a real quick one, just letting you know that I don't charge a retainer. I only get paid when I actually do my job, which is to help you find a home.
Got it.
When that does happen, that does lead us to compensation. So as I had mentioned before, more often than not, the seller pays for either all or a majority of the compensation to the buyer's agent, which would be me. With that being said, my services are 3%. And so let's say hypothetically that a seller is offering 2.5%. There's a couple steps that I go through, one of which is I will first ask the listing agent if they can ask if the seller would be willing to pay my full 3% commission. In addition to that, I'm going to come to you on the very front end before even making an offer to be clear that what that would then mean if the seller is offering 2.5% is that part of your closing fees, in addition to your lender origination fees, your title fees, would be an additional 0.5% of my compensation would be a portion of your closing fees. Again, this would be a conversation that we would have multiple times before it ever got to that place. That's the last thing that I would want for you to do, is to be surprised by a fee. However, with that, I do intend very much to try to get that full compensation paid for by the seller, and so that that's not a cost for you. Do you have any specific questions on that?
No, I'm just kind of curious because I know a friend of mine had sold her house for, I think she had it listed for 4%. So, and I'm assuming that would be, I don't know how that's divided up, but I'm just saying, I would assume that would be the situation. So you wouldn't do that if that was the, what if I said no? I mean, that I wouldn't be willing to do that.
Talking about you wouldn't be willing to do
I wouldn't be willing to pay the other 0.5%. Why wouldn't, I mean, if it was possible, that's all they were paying the sellers, that was what they were paying, then why would I want to compensate you for that? I mean, if the seller normally pays
Of course. And yet, would you say that the seller is benefiting from our partnership, or would you say that you are benefiting from our partnership?
Well, it'd be both. The seller gets a sale out of it.
I agree. And so it's from this process that, we are starting this conversation so that I can go to work for you. myself and my team can go to work for you. I'm going to be working through this process of finding you multiple properties. I'm going to be digging in every resource that I have to see if I can't find properties that aren't even on the market to ensure that you get the best opportunity out of what is there. And so because of that, I believe that there's a certain cost associated to that. I think that you would agree that even if it is a nominal compensation that would be owed by you, that this might be something that you could find value in.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I was just kind of curious how that worked because it's like, yeah, it's just a little bit I have to think about that. So.
Of course. And so imagine, if it's a $350,000 house, as you had said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the difference would be $3,500.
Yeah, and that's significant,
It is significant. And so what would I need to do as a professional to make you feel like I earned that $3,500?
Negotiate the seller to pay for it.
Okay. And so that is, again, that's one of the first things that I do, right? Especially when we see that, let's say that it was 2%. That is a conversation that I have. That is, if I have a buyer that is interested, and this is one where she ends up wanting to make an offer on, would the seller be willing to pay the difference of 1%? And I would have to do the same thing as the conversation with you. I would have to have that conversation with them is, do they find value in either selling their home or not selling their home if it's the difference of $3,500?
Right. Okay.
So it's the same thing. I mean, again, I do everything in my power to make sure that that's something that you do not necessarily pay for.
Right.
However, that is something that does come up, and I just want to make sure that this isn't a conversation that you're surprised by later on, where some agents would do that. They would just avoid the conversation. They'd have you sign this document. You'd make it to closing, and then you'd be curious about how this fee snuck up. And again, going back to the fact that I like to run a business based on integrity, I want to be upfront with you now.
And I appreciate that. So,
so it sounds like thus far there's not much of a pushback. And again, the percentage of time that it would be, at a 2% commission, in what I see is not necessarily likely. It's not the majority for sure. So maybe that this is something that we table until we get into that actual situation, and we can have a further discussion at that time.
I think I'd appreciate moving forward in that respect. Yeah, just to kind of see where we go with all of this, because it's just,
Sure.
Like I said, just need to kind of chew on it for a little bit.
Of course. So in addition to compensation for purchase, now, do you intend to rent at all?
The house?
Yeah. So if you weren't able to purchase a home, would you be renting?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I'll just stay where I am.
Okay. And then do you have any intention of doing an option, say like a rent to own, lease to own?
No, I'm not really interested in anything like that.
Okay. So then I'll just leave those two sections where we won't touch those.
Okay.
And then, so understanding that there's a buyer default here that says that the buyer will pay the broker's compensation immediately upon buyer's default on any contract to acquire property. This is talking about not in the case that, let's say that you were not able to sell your property, right? Or you were not able to get financing. This is one where all parties did their job. We had worked through to the very end, and let's say day of closing, you just decided not to purchase the home. In that situation, this is saying that my compensation would be due because I did my end of the bargain. Again, This is very rare that this ever happens. And yet this is just letting you know that we're all working towards getting you into that new home with a lot more property than what you have now. And there's a cost associated to that.
All right, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Protection period. So protection period, this just says that you will pay the broker's compensation within 90 days after the termination date. So you're able to fire me at any time. We'll kind of talk about it in that next paragraph. And yet, if I was the one to bring you a property and you ended up buying it, let's say, and again, I highly doubt that this is you. However, there are some individuals that have done this where a buyer ended up meeting a seller accidentally, and the buyer and seller, had a great conversation, and they just said, you know what, let's just do this without agents, and we can save a little money and do it that way. Well, you would have never had that conversation had it not been from the work that I did, or quite frankly, what the listing agent did to market the property. And so this is just saying that if it's my efforts or my team's efforts that were able to bring you a property that you ended up purchasing, and you did that within 90 days from firing us, then we would still be due that compensation because of the efforts that we've done.
Okay, and to be clear, this is only regarding a property that you and your team have shown me, correct?
That is correct. Absolutely.
If it was something, if I met, a friend of mine who said, hey, by the way, I'm selling my house, and it was a house I'd always liked and wanted for a long time, and she said she would sell it to me, with just agents, then that would not necessarily count. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying, I just want to make sure I understand it.
Yeah. Again, I don't expect to be paid for work that I didn't do, but I absolutely expect to be paid for work that I do.
And that's fair enough. We all do.
Yeah, of course. So with that, there is an early termination. So you are able to fire me at any time if that's what you choose to do. Although in 8 years, I've never been fired, so don't be the first. However, this is an opportunity that if for whatever reason you felt like we weren't working hard enough for you, or if it wasn't working out, all you'd have to do is shoot me an email or a text. And I just prefer either of those because it's time stamped and we can have it for our files. That's something that you just would let me know you no longer intend to work with us, and that'll be more than enough.
Okay.
In addition to that, if there is some kind of dispute where we can't resolve, again, in 8 years, I've never had this, and yet it could happen that if that's the case, then what it's just saying is that we agreed to go to mediation. If not mediation, then it would be moved up to arbitration before it would go to litigation. And all of that to basically say, if we have an unresolved dispute, we're going to try to resolve it outside of the courts as much as possible, because as soon as it goes in front of a judge, it can get really, really expensive.
Right.
Again, I highly doubt that there's anything that we're not going to be able to resolve ourselves. And yet this is built in from that perspective that it does in fact happen for some people.
Right. Okay. That sounds reasonable.
Paragraph 11 talks about assignability. And so this just basically says that my intention was to help you through this brokerage agreement, that is that we are to work. So the broker is able to assign to another agent. Let's say that something was to happen to me health-wise and I wasn't able to carry forth the rest of the contract. If you chose to still honor this agreement, then my broker would be able to assign this to someone else to be able to help you through this process. It would also mean the same thing for you and anyone who kind of supports you. Let's say that something was to happen to you and yet you still intended to purchase the home, then someone would be able to still move forward with the contract because it was based on what you intended to do. Again, that's a relationship with you and say your power of attorney. I highly doubt that if something was happening to you health-wise, that someone would go ahead and purchase a property on your behalf, not asking you. This is just basically from that perspective that says that you and I, we both intended to move forward with this contract unless it had been terminated.
Yes. That sounds good. Okay.
And then last, because I don't really put any special clauses in here, this just lets you know that my office, we actually function as a transaction broker. And what this means is that we work with you to move through the transaction. It also might mean that because I'm with the #1 brokerage in all of South Pinellas, that it's very well possible that another agent in my office might have the seller for the property that you're looking to purchase. Okay. And so this actually allows for brokerage, the company, to represent both the buyer and seller, although we technically don't represent either of you, but to represent that transaction. If we had a relationship which is referred to as a single agency relationship, then what that would mean is let's say that someone else in my office had the perfect property for you. I wouldn't be able to, or we wouldn't be able to help you through that process because they would have had a single relationship with just that person who owns the property.
Okay.
Or is that a little confusing?
It's a little confusing. It's a little confusing, but I sort of think I understand.
Yeah, so basically in the state of Florida, in order for my broker, right, to be able to potentially handle both the listing side as well as the paperwork for you and through the process for you, the brokerage itself has to function as if it represents the transaction, right? So it's not going to be loyal to either one of you in the sense of they're not going to hide information from one party or the next. What it's going to do is it's going to act as kind of a moderator through that process so that you can make an informed decision and they can make an informed decision and work towards a transaction together, as opposed to, again, just loyalty to one party or the next.
Okay. All right. I think I get that now.
Okay. I know as someone who's not an attorney who has to deal with all of the legal mumbo jumbo, sometimes it's difficult to describe, but if you do have any questions through this process, please ask away and I will do my best to try to describe it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And that's it. I mean, that really is through this process. This is how we kind of navigate through what my obligations are for you, kind of how you can show up at a high level so that we can get you towards that property with more land. And so do you have any last questions through this process that I can help answer for you?
No, I think I'm good. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Fantastic. And then that really is it. We went a little bit over time, but this is important to go through this process. I definitely think that for a lot of people, understanding and being able to describe the buyer brokerage agreement with as much layman terms as possible, and sometimes that's very difficult to do, especially when you're going line by line. You can see the value there. Kat, how is this different than the way that you, or maybe not, than the way that you go through the BBA with someone?
Going through line by line, I think is a good idea. It makes a lot of sense and you get the opportunity to explain it. When I have done this buyer's and brokerage agreement, I usually will do something and say, look, and let's see how it goes the first, showing house or something like that, and make sure that we actually still want to work with each other. And then I'll ask you to sign this. But now that we've had this discussion, so you understand what the situation is, because there could be a situation, I don't want to go through all of that, have somebody sign it and then turn out that I don't really want to work with them because they are unrealistic or not fulfilling their side of the bargain or anything like that either. And so I say, okay, well, let's go, we'll look at a couple houses, first two houses, and then I'm going to bring this up again for you to see later on. So that's the only difference that I have on that.
Yeah, I guess my school of thought is kind of if you give them an inch, right? So right. I've definitely had where, not to myself, because I use the BBA and it's kind of like a non-negotiable for me.
Right.
Some people haven't used it, and then the buyer kind of gets not nasty, but it's like, well, you've been showing me properties without it, so why do you even need it? And unless,
and I would put the caveat on that was it'd be like we're going to look at one house, after the first showing, then we'll bring this up again, and I'm going to ask you to sign this if we, turns out that we're on the same page about, what you want and what you need and things like that. I mean, there's no like letting it fly for a while or anything like that.
And to your point, setting the expectation up front is definitely important. Nicole said, are they supposed to write in their social security number when it asks for tax ID? No, absolutely not. Again, I don't want their social security number. I don't want to know their finances. I don't want to see their tax returns. I really want nothing. I want the lender to tell me what they can go shopping for, and we go shopping, or if they have proof of funds in an account, then that's about the extent of it. The more information that I have about their finances, the more liable I am if anything happens to their identity or anything. So yeah, I don't want to touch it. Okay, so let's get some information from people. What did you like? What did you take away? What would you like to incorporate into this when you go through it? Again, the purpose of the buyer brokerage agreement is to set clear expectations. I think that it allows you to be professional, look like a professional, and show them that you're confident through this process, that you've you've done this before, you know how to navigate them through this, right? Because there is a lot of what we do that is legal, right? I mean, we're probably the closest things without having a law degree with the amount of legal documentation that we deal with on a daily basis. And it's very important for you to know. Kat, any last comments or remarks that people might find value about the BBA?
I know it works, and I know I've seen agents that are protected by it when their buyers get crappy and move away and buy something else without them. And I see that it works when you hold the other agent's feet to the fire. So, and nothing is worse than having somebody go out and do that and you didn't have something signed and you miss out on, $400,000 or $500,000 sale, which I also know has happened, not to me, but I know to other agents that that's happened.
Right. Absolutely.
It's more gut wrenching than that.
Yeah, I mean, to have nothing, right? We're not even going to go into how much of this is enforceable, which is a question that comes up all the time. Having something is way more enforceable than having nothing. Let's just put it that way.
Yes. Yes.
Let's see. Leslie said, I enjoyed the clarification on this form. A lot was legal jargon. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm going line by line for you because we're right? And I also want you to be able to pick up on some of these things. You might be paraphrasing, and of course, I was paraphrasing some of those paragraphs. Right. But on some of the stuff, do not avoid some of the heavier conversations, right? I mean, we sat there on the 2% commission for a little bit. And that's
probably where people are going to get pushed back anyway.
Right.
It's a good idea to know what to say.
The problem that I would have is if you were to put 3% down and then not explain it, and then we get to that situation, and then now they're finding $1,700 of closing costs because you didn't explain what that looks like. Is definitely a big one. What else? I know there's more people on here than Leslie, so tell me what you got. Linda says this helps to see the importance of this form and how to talk through it. Thank you, Linda. Yeah, and so getting comfortable with the listing agreement, the buyer brokerage agreement. Everyone thinks that the buy portion of this is so much easier than the listing portion, and it's not. Because to Kat's point, you could end up getting stuck with weeks of showing people property because it's easier than having the fierce conversation at the beginning that is a listing agreement, and then have nothing to show for it because you didn't have a buyer brokerage agreement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so thank you, Kat. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. That was fun.
I don't know about fun, but
I know. I laughed. I was laughing.
So this is the process. Now, here's the deal. Watching me go through this is only 10% of the process. You have to practice these just like the listing presentation. You have to practice doing a mock buyer consultation with your script partner. That is what's important, because then you're the person who has control. You're the person who gets to have conversations. You're the person who gets to make sure that they're moving in the right direction. And you're the person who has said it before. You've practiced the scripts. You've handled the objection. So when it comes up, you're not like, I don't know what to say if they're saying, I don't want to pay the difference of the 1%, right? So Bo said, I've been trying to put this together for a while now, and it's nice to have you walk us through the templates. Absolutely. This is recorded, right? So this will be on YouTube. You'll be able to go back and watch it. But the point being is that please, please, please practice doing it yourself. Okay? That is how you're going to get better. All right, so it is 10:15, give or take. We would normally do script practice. I know it's a little wonky because we have Memorial Day. I do need to change up the script partners for this week. However, what's more important to me is that you spend the next 45 minutes before the sales meeting going and focusing on your lead generation. So we're going to be lead generating for the next 45 minutes. And then we're going to go into the sales meeting. And then tomorrow we'll pick up with our normal scheduled programming with our script practice and our lead gen afterwards. Okay. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat box. More than happy to help. However, remember that it's the best that we can do with the next 45 minutes is to get on the phone, send some messages, respond to emails, do thank you notes, whatever it is to move your message forward with the people in your world. All right, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Bye-bye.